So let's get this thing rolling. My name is Eric Elliott, and I'm the Advanced Hunter Education Coordinator with California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Tonight, we're going to be talking turkey hunting with a husband and wife team. Tonight, we have with us Hannah and Justin Haley. If you guys don't mind, just give us a quick background on each of you and maybe what you do for a career and how long you've been turkey hunting.
Hi, my name's Hannah Haley. This is our son Killian, our 7-month-old baby. In that photo you see there, I was pregnant with him when we got those birds. So this is my third season now. Yeah, this will be my third season now turkey hunting. Um, I'm a wildland firefighter. I work for the U.S. Forest Service and been doing that for about 17 years now. I'm a fuels captain, and I manage a lot of our prescribed fire and fuel break work and things like that. Um, Done a whole bunch of different work for the Forest Service and fire, crews, engines, hot shots, things of that nature. So very an outdoorsy person. Work outside, love being outside. Um,
That's
and
great.
yeah,
Thank you, Hannah. Thanks for being on tonight with us. Hannah was with us last year and she was such a hit with the audience. I was like, can we do a double take on this? So thanks so much for being with us tonight. So tell us about your turkey hunting experience, Hannah.
so my husband had been wanting me to turkey hunt with him since we got together, going on 9 years now. Um, and I had some downtime after I had a sinus surgery and I had some downtime. And in that time, I was able to take my hunter education course online. Um, and he came home that day and I told him that I had finished my education course. He didn't know that I was doing it, but
I didn't help her at all either.
Atta boy.
it was just something that I was like, you know what? I really want to, after I heal up from this, I really want to go out and try to get my first bird. And so sorry about the baby growling. Our babysitter got sick, so here we are. Um,
Sorry.
but I took the course and passed it, and he got home from work that night, and I said, hey, let's go get my hunting license. And we did, and a couple weeks later, I went on my first hunt, and we had an excellent time. I learned a lot. I had a lot of lessons learned, some fails and some misses, and yeah, we really learned a lot out there, and it was really, really good. I just have really
Oh,
enjoyed doing it.
that's awesome. How about you, Justin? Give us a quick background.
All right, let me trade this off. Yep, I'm Justin Haley. I've been hunting turkeys my entire adult life. My dad was a game warden. I grew up in Wyoming, so it was just part of the family thing to do. Currently a law enforcement officer for the U.S. Forest Service. I got a pretty extensive background in wildland fire, so like my wife, I'm pretty outdoorsy as well. And I like to think I'm best at hunting turkeys, but by no means good at it. So, but my freezer's always full, so that's what matters.
Yeah, I love it. Let's get to the purpose of the webinar. And so it sounds like our career paths are similar in the fact that oftentimes in our careers on different operations, whether it's like for us, search warrant or like a marijuana grow, after we do a debrief where people are just asking, how did things go? What worked well? What could be improved upon? And what can we learn from this to improve in the future? And so that's kind of the purpose of this webinar. And a lot of times I think we learn, at least I learn, by storytelling. And so we're going to hear some stories from Hannah and Justin tonight. And the whole goal is to be like, okay, what actually worked? Were there some fails? And if so, no big deal. Let's learn from it. And I think the audience is going to learn a ton from not only successes, but on things that could definitely be improved upon. So let's start with your very first hunt, Hannah. So start with describing, like, even your emotions. What was going on before you picked up your shotgun and went on your first hunt ever, and just kind of work us through that hunt.
Yeah, so first off, I didn't have any camo. So I wore entirely all of my husband's gear, which was too big and uncomfortable. And yeah, so that was the thing. We spent a day trying to really figure out what was going to work for me and what I was going to be comfortable in, and just did the best that we could. We didn't really want to, invest a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of money into gear for me if it wasn't something that I was going to enjoy. Um, so that first off was the thing that was a little bit of a learning curve, being out there in gear that was too big for me. Wearing men's gear is kind of an issue that I've dealt with in the fire service, so it's not something I'm unfamiliar with. Um, but anyways, that was one of the first things, one of the first little hurdles to get over is what equipment was I going to wear and how was I going to be comfortable out there in the field. And then Justin and I spent a day out, a couple days. We went out and kind of scouted some areas. He told me, what we were looking for, and we found some tracks and we heard some birds in the afternoon, and we found a good spot and we went out early in the morning. Being parents, one of the main hurdles was being able to hunt together
Mhm.
and getting childcare to make that happen. Now that I'm a little bit more seasoned, we take turns when we can, and if we can find childcare, we can go out together. But most of the time, we're having to take turns hunting now. So we got some childcare established. It was the week before our anniversary, is what it was. It was my first hunt the week before our anniversary, which is April 25th, and it was the very tail end of the season. Only had like 2 weeks to hunt, and went out. It was cold. I was fidgety. I was a bit nervous. I was really excited.
She talked too much.
I had a lot of questions like, what are we looking for? How do we know when they're going to fly down? What does it sound like? How much should we be calling? And so we didn't see any birds that day.
Wow.
But we did look around a bit and I found a cool shed, and later I found the matching antler to that. Found the other shed. So that was a cool find. And we saw some deer that day and talked a little bit about deer hunting, something I haven't done yet. But
Yeah,
yeah, we we definitely
that's
I was
awesome.
uncomfortable, and that wiggling around in excitement was something that took me a long time to really figure out.
Yeah. Do you think what did you expect for the hunt? Did there anything strike you as, man, I just did not expect this?
um
You were cold.
I was very cold. It was very cold. It was very cold in the morning, and um mainly the gloves and my hands being really cold and not wearing,
Mm,
I couldn't wear thick enough gloves so I wouldn't be able to pull the trigger, and didn't have the right type of equipment for me. And so that was something, and having to like get over shivering. I wasn't expecting to be that cold. Every
yeah,
time I've been out in the woods, I'm moving around a lot in my job and the work I do. And so sitting still is not something I'm entirely used to when I'm out in the woods. So that was something that I wasn't really expecting to feel at that deep of a level. Just like that numbness in my hands was not something I was really expecting to be that severe.
so true. I think that's a really good starting point for a lot of the audience is just be familiar with your gear and knowing because that always strikes me too. It's like a lot of hunting is waiting and being patient. I think some of the most successful hunters are the most patient ones. And just not being able to get up and move. I mean, my toes start getting so cold. So knowing your gear and knowing and having good solid gear that you can sit tight in is really, really important. So let me ask you, Justin, what was it like hunting with a brand new hunter that happens to be your wife? Were there things was it rewarding? Was it frustrating? Tell me from your experience.
Well, the one thing that kept going through my mind was there's a song, country called "My Baby Looks Good in Camouflage," and that song kept playing in my head all day. But um, I've taken my friends' kids out and my friends that are new to hunting, and I kind of felt like that first day we weren't going to see anything, but there's a lot more to turkey hunting in particular than just shooting a bird. It's the patience, which is, if you've watched any of our webinars, patience is the overall key to this. Just getting people used to sitting still, because if you go try it, like just right now, go outside and try to sit under a tree for 20 minutes, it's hard to sit still.
Oh yeah.
With her, one of the things that we talked about was you look with your eyes, not with your head, because turkey's vision's very much based on movement. And then I was honestly just blown away that I went to work one day and came home and she had her hunter safety card and didn't say a word to me about it. And then she was like, let's go to the gun store and let's look at shotguns. And I said, twist my arm. And ever since then, it's just been like we plan at least one weekend where we get out together and then rock, paper, scissors to see who gets to go out the next day by themselves. So
Wow.
I'm a firm believer that if both mom and dad hunt, then the kids are going to hunt too, because it becomes like a family, culture. And turkey meat tastes good, and getting as many in the freezer as you can get. That's what it's about.
Yeah. So tell us about your first successful turkey hunt and what you learned from that, Hannah.
So yeah, this was my very first bird. We went out with a friend, Keith Swope, who has done some of these webinars before. And he he was doing the calling for us, and we went up the hill and we had been calling for a while and wasn't getting anything, and nothing was really working out, and we were ready to go. We were about to call it a day. It was getting into the afternoon. And he decided to, we decided to do just one more call out, see if we can get anything. Way down the hill, we heard a response. We heard a gobble. And so we went back and we set back up and ready to go and keep calling. And it was quiet for a minute. And then we hear another call and he's way closer. I mean, it was, gosh, how far out do you think he was?
It probably started about a mile out.
Yeah, it was a ways.
There was no wind. By the time we got sat back down and set up, he was maybe 200 yards out. We didn't. I had enough time to put my gun down and get behind a tree. That's how fast it happened.
Amazing.
And he ran up on us, and I was just set up, and I think one of the lessons learned, and one of the lessons we're still learning,
we'll get into it,
is Justin got a good sight on the bird before I did, and from my view, I wasn't able to see him yet. There was some brush in the way, and where Justin was on the other side of the tree from me, he could see the bird, and he was whispering, "Shoot him! Shoot him! Shoot him! Come on, shoot him!" And just giving me all this pressure, and my heart was just pounding. I was like shaking. I just had all these nerves, and I couldn't see the bird yet. I couldn't see him, and I knew he was right there, but I just could not see him yet. And then finally he came around the bush, and I finally got a good view on him, and I was able to get a good shot, and it was only 25 feet away. He was real close.
Wow.
But it was just waiting until I knew I had a good shot.
Yeah.
And so that was the main thing, and not succumbing to the pressure.
Yeah, and
Yes.
one thing I could see he was a bearded bird. And from her angle, she apparently couldn't.
Yeah, I couldn't see him.
So I did, after in the picture where she's sitting with him there, like that was one thing we talked about, was like put on her to wait to see
The beard.
and not just shooting at a head. Because I've known people that just shoot at the head and they end up whacking a hen.
Yeah. That's great. So just a little bit of feedback on this. Justin, you're cutting out just a little bit, so maybe get a little bit closer to the mic. Well, we can hear Hannah just fine, which is, I guess, the most important thing.
Well, welcome to my world.
So yeah, I think that perspective thing that you were talking about is huge. I've done that multiple times, especially with new hunters. You're whispering, you're just so excited about a bird coming in, or they're harvesting their first elk or deer, and you're just so pumped, and you're just telling them, okay, go ahead, shoot, and that's that pressure can sometimes be overwhelming to a new hunter. How did you take it? Did you basically tell them, hey, shut up, I'll shoot when I want to? How did you deal with that, Hannah?
Um, well, with that first one, this has happened a couple times. With that first one, the bird was so close and it happened so quickly that, you know, and I couldn't see the bird at all with that first one. So there was nothing for me to shoot at for all I could tell, with my first bird here. With the other bird in the very first picture where we both have the birds, I took a shot and I succumbed to the pressure and I missed. And I was mad. I was real mad because I got overcome with the pressure. He was telling me to shoot. He told me I had a good shot, that I could do it. And from my angle, I just knew it wasn't going to work for me. But I did it. I took the shot and I missed.
Yeah.
But yeah, that has been a hard thing for me, especially as a new hunter with someone who's so experienced and has taught me so much, and has teaches so many other people how to hunt, and people come to him to learn. And so, I kind of got lucky that it's my husband teaching me and all of that. And it's a little bit intimidating when you have someone that's so experienced and you don't have as much experience. You really want to listen and default to what they say. But at the end of the day, when I followed my gut and I did what was right for me, that's when I was successful.
Well said. I love it. So tell me about
If I could defend
you're off to the right. Is this kind of a Clint Eastwood tradition that you
Yeah.
guys do?
Yeah. So it's a tradition for Justin and all of his buddies to smoke a backwoods cigar after they get a bird. And so I did it.
I
I
love
don't
it.
smoke. I don't use tobacco, but I took a couple puffs. I was pretty I had some pretty good
Yeah.
adrenaline, and I was real happy after that. And that was a real good bird. He had
Yeah.
about 11-inch beard and 1.25 spurs. He was a very good big bird for my first one. So
Yeah.
um
So from a hunting tactics perspective, the thing that we can learn from this hunt is patience. This happened
yeah.
after all day of hunting, and this happened in the afternoon when you were getting up to leave. You finally heard a gobbler, right?
Yep. From a long ways away.
Yeah.
So yeah, that patience is key.
So Justin, what do you think was going on with his gobbler? Was he trying to find more hens that late in the day? Why do you think he erupted with a gobble right then and not earlier? Was he looking for a new batch of hens, you think?
Yeah, hopefully I don't cut out with my audio.
Good.
We call it the mid-morning or afternoon shuffle, or the afternoon commute. Um, like what I've noticed is in the morning, the dominant toms are going to hen up, and then they're going to breed all those hens. Throughout the day, those hens are going to walk off and lay an egg, and eventually they're going to stay at their nest. And then when that point hits, all of these toms in the area, they're going to be looking for a new girlfriend. And I think that's what we stumbled in on with this guy, was just a tom that was looking for another group of hens, and we were saying the right thing.
And it's worth
I love
noting he was real beat up.
Yeah, he was like Hannah said, he had about an 11-inch beard. And I got a picture somewhere. He had like 1.5 inch spurs, and he was beat up. Like he was the big boy.
Yeah,
He'd been fighting.
it's hard to tell in the photo, but you can kind of see in that the bottom right side of his fan there, his feathers were all broken, and all of his legs, his leg meat was all bruised up and stuff.
Amazing. So just a scrapper.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that too, Justin. I had my turkey hunting mentor told me when I first got into this, when I was a young man, he goes, I killed more birds after 10 a.m. than I have off the roost. And I think that's kind of our experience as well. Sometimes you can get lucky and find them and be able to roost turkeys and get them to fly off the roost and be successful. But more often than not, it's like even after 10 a.m. or even in the afternoon, we've noticed that some of these birds are just so susceptible to the call.
Yeah. Hey, let me jump in. There's a few questions in the Q&A if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And we're still seeing that black box in the corner
Yeah.
of the screen.
A couple people have
Okay.
noted that gray box. But I'll go through some of these questions because it's actually a good transition. We've been talking about it.
Yeah.
When is a good time of day to hunt turkeys, morning or evening, and what time of year, fall or spring? It's been my experience. I've killed birds from sunup all the way to the very last 2 minutes of shoot time. It's all about patience and knowing that throughout the day, their behavior is going to change. If you can roost a bird the night before and get an idea where he's going to fly down the next morning, then your hunt could only be 4 or 5 minutes. Typically, I end up doing that in the first half hour of the hunt, though.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're patient, you can hit that mid-morning shuffle or the afternoon commute, like we call it, when all the hens have been bred and they're off laying on their nest and all the toms are circulating around. For springtime, fall is a lot of spot and stock. Last fall, I actually used my decoys just as an experiment and it worked. But I didn't just bring a tom in. I brought 30 birds in at once. So um, it's all about getting out there and trying new stuff and being patient and realizing that you're going to miss and you're going to screw up. And hey, that gray box went away.
All
But
right.
stick to itiveness and being patient. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah. Really well said, brother.
And then there's another one. Do we use decoys or just calls? Typically, if I'm hunting by myself, I take one hen decoy with me. If I'm on public land, I don't bring a gobbler decoy even in my truck. But if I'm with somebody or I'm hunting private land where I can stash my decoys, I'll bring 2 or 3 hens and a strutting Jake decoy. But again, decoys are kind of tricky because later in the season, it's just like ducks when they get decoy shy. Some of these cagey old toms, have been shot at and missed, and they'll see these decoys and they may hang up outside of range or somewhere you can't see them. So between decoys or calls, I would say calling is the more important, and learning that like a box call, you can reach out real far. A pot call or a slate call, you can do a lot more with it as far as vocalizations. And then like a mouth call is when there's a bird walking up on your gun and you can't move, kind of thing. So hopefully that answers that question, Tom.
Very good. So, Justin, talk to us about this hunt.
All right. So that is my nephew in both pictures, and in the background of the picture on the right is my brother, and this was their first real turkey hunt outside of like a pop-up blind where we're just sitting out under a tree. And we left at about 4:30 in the morning. We get out to our spot and the sun comes up and there's birds talking in the trees and the world's coming alive. And I'm talking to a bird, he's coming in. It's taking a little bit of work. And then I hear a snore come from right next to me. And it was my nephew sleeping. And my brother reached his hand over and like over where we were at like this, and him on the chest. And as he did that, the bird that was 20 yards away started to alert putt and ran off, and I never saw him again. So
Wow.
a good night's sleep is pretty important. And if you do decide to take a nap, do so at your own risk. And I've found the best time to take a nap is right about noon. So, yeah. Yeah. And this is another buddy that I took out and been sitting there for about 2 hours. And I look over and he's sleeping. So I had to take a hero shot of him. And we had a bird come in and I have another picture. You can see the bird in the far background of the picture, and he's just like that.
Wow.
Yeah. But
Amazing.
he ended up shooting a bird, but it wasn't that day.
So how many times have you had it where you're you've done a calling sequence and you're getting up and ready to change an area or even go home, and you've heard birds come in just on the sly without gobbling at all, and they've surprised you when you got up to get ready to rock?
Well, I'll say the times that I've caught it, at least 2 or 3 times a season.
Wow.
And I know that there's been times where I stood up and there had to have been a bird somewhere nearby.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, when I was talking about that first day with my wife, you look with your eyes, not by moving your head. And anytime that I wanted to move and I made the decision that I was going to move, I was going to leave the area entirely, but I sat there for another 5 minutes before I even got ready to stand up, before I put my calls away, before I did anything. I just sat there for another 5 minutes, not making any noise to
Mm-hmm.
let any animals in the area kind of play out what they were going to be doing. Um, patience is your best weapon in this game.
Yeah, we had those jakes fly off last season.
Yeah, we had a couple of jakes that were probably 10 yards out behind a couple of whitethorn bushes.
And they came in quiet. We
Yeah,
had no idea they were there.
and we weren't out to shoot jakes, but just to illustrate the point, they were probably 10 yards out. We didn't know they were there, and we stood up and off they flew.
I
Got
think that's a
got a
good,
couple more questions in here.
yeah.
Do we use binos or a rangefinder? I keep a monocular in my vest. I don't use a rangefinder, um, just based on like my experience and kind of gauging how far away things are. But I do keep a monocular. That way, if you see something you want to see, like they're always handy and they're pretty lightweight.
Yeah.
How many decoys in my set? I'm going to preface this by saying I also hunt ducks, and if it were up to me and I had my own little hunting paradise, I'd have a permanent spread of 15 birds out there. But if I'm hunting somewhere new or on public land, and I prefer hunting public land, I'll only take one on me, but I'll have 2 or 3 different poses in my truck. Um, and if I'm hunting private land and I know I'm the only one out there, or it's just me and her, I'll take like I said, a Jake decoy, and 2 or 3 hens, different poses.
You're
And
fading
that
out like a little bit, Justin.
okay, I'll take a Jake decoy and 2 or 3 hens in different poses.
Okay, very good.
One more is how wide is the wandering area for the wild turkey? Um, I would say it's hard to really pinpoint. Like we've been watching this one. We have a smoke phase bearded hen in our area, and she's target number one because she's got a beard and she's black and white. I would say that we can keep an eye on that one individual at probably 5 square miles, depending on what kind of vegetation and terrain you're looking at. We live in pretty mountainous area.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on the season too. I remember during the wildfire years, the turkeys, we saw a turkey at 10,000 foot elevation. And so I think that is not normal. But on the other hand, I think they just disperse to find food um, and then
Cover.
also, yeah, exactly.
And then one last one. What do you use to find new hunting locations? Any apps? I used OnX for a little bit, um, but I found that paying the money for that wasn't worth more than just driving around. And if you see something, go up and knock on a door and have a conversation. I will say if you're gonna go up and ask permissions for people, don't be wearing camouflage, dress nice, and be willing to take no for an answer.
Yeah.
And don't ask to hunt without being able to offer some kind of service in return, whether it's yard work or money or helping throw hay or fixing fences or whatever.
I love it. Okay, let's get to this slide. Um, so kids and hunting, tell me your experience with that.
Well, as you can see, we have 3 kids.
Sorry about our growler back there.
I will say, even if you don't even hear a bird, it's the best time in the woods I've ever had.
Oh man.
Being out with my kids. That picture there, me and my buddy who has a kid the same age as Hudson there, um, we threw up a blind and put coloring books in there and brought those 2 boys, and we heard birds all day long, but boys will be boys, and they started roughhousing and banging against the side of the blind. But when we would start calling, that the boys would be quiet and they'd poke up and look out the windows. So and it's exposing at a young age, those boys, any kids really, to what it means to get out in the woods and hunt. But if you're
Yeah.
gonna do it, go prepared. I highly recommend a blind, and coloring books seem to be the way, because cell phones make noise accidentally and tablets make noise, and you want something that'll keep them entertained and not make a lot of noise, and have juice boxes and gummy bears on hand.
But I think that's half the battle, is just making it fun. And so I've got something special for this webinar. So anybody that's registered for this webinar and is listening to this live, if you take a kid turkey hunting on the junior opener, which is this coming Saturday, send me a picture. You don't have to be successful. You don't have to have a bird down, just a picture of you in the hunting woods, and I'll send you a hunter education hat. Okay, so email me with that picture, and then have the picture date time stamp so it's not from like 1977. And yeah, I'll send you a hat. So I love the fact that you're taking kids hunting. I think it's so important, and I think turkey hunting is a really good way for people to expose kids and new hunters for the first time.
Hey, well, I know we need to move on, but there's one question I do want to answer.
Yeah,
Why do I prefer hunting on public land?
yeah,
There's a lot of reasons, but being a Forest Service employee and working for the American public, there's part of a pride that comes along with that. Like, hey, this is all of ours. Anybody can come out here and have the same success with the same effort. Then there's a challenge aspect to it. A lot of birds are on private land, and that's because a lot of people, do things on that land to entice the birds to be there. Um, I believe in the concept of public land, and I think the hunting public is a big reason why we still have so much public land. And to be able to have a part in utilizing it means a lot personally to me. So that's why I prefer hunting on public land.
I would just echo that and just go just one step further. I think it was mentioned in one of the questions, like somebody said, there's a bunch of birds on private land, and there's a ton of turkeys on private land, and a lot of those turkeys aren't getting hunted. But once you start hunting turkeys on public land, you realize this is a quarry that is just they're they're just so good at surviving, and they're smart, and so you're hunting a bird that's wary, and it's, to me, it's a huge challenge too. So I know you do that, Justin, too. I think you try to at least harvest 2 or 3 birds per year, or 2 birds per year, maybe on public land. And then is that kind of your strategy?
Yeah, my personal goal is, if I could get 3 off of public land in the spring, that's what I'm gonna do. But if I have something like I'm bringing a kid out or my wife or anybody else, I like to go somewhere where it's a little bit more of a sure thing, until like this year, I'm not gonna do anything special for her. We're going out and we're gonna do the grind. But yeah, That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
A couple more questions. Do the birds return to the same roost? Typically, yeah, but everything's circumstantial. If they get ran off by a coyote, or if it rains, or if a semi truck comes by at the wrong time and they go left instead of right, they could roost in a different tree. So the key to that is just getting out there, doing your scouting, and knowing the trees they like, because they do like trees. They'll come back to the same tree, but not necessarily 2 days in a row. And then there's a good one from an anonymous attendee. Should I get a blind and call and just go out and try by myself? Hell yeah, you should. That's the best way to learn. You could even forego the blind, just get a good set of camouflage. Don't wear white socks, and make sure the soles of your feet are a natural color, and get out there and learn the hard way. That's the best way to do it.
I love the way you answered that, Justin. That's the whole concept of advanced hunter education, is just getting people after it, telling people this is doable. You could go on public land this year and go turkey hunting. You could do that, in a couple weeks, and just get. There's no better teacher than experience, and so I love the way you answered that. Let's move on to this next slide, and tell us about this hunt and what you learned from it.
So this picture should say that if you're going to go out, check the weather. Um, we live kind of high elevation. This is only a few miles from our house. And that snowfall happened overnight from the night before I went to bed. And I'd planned going hunting all week. I worked all week. That was my Saturday. And I woke up and I see snow on the ground, and I said, screw it, I'm going anyway. Um, didn't get a bird, but I did get to go out and do my thing. And I mean, man, I look cool in that picture, right? So, part of having like the coolest camo and the best calls you can find, and the raciest shotgun, that's all well and good, but you got to remember our grandpas were hunting them in flannels and blue jeans. So you gotta keep an eye on the weather, just as much as knowing what your gear looks like and the condition it's in. Because if it's raining and storming, I mean, nothing's as ugly as a wet turkey, and you're going to be miserable coming home anyway. So, like, being prepared also includes the environment, I'd say.
Yeah. How much do you think the rain and precipitation, rain or snow, affects turkey behavior in the springtime? Are they more active? Are they receptive to being called? What's your experience with that?
When it's so there's a few things there. So when there's a lot of moisture in the air, sound doesn't carry as well. So your calls aren't going to be as effective. The birds aren't going to want to move a lot, especially if it's rain. I find they move more when there's snow on the ground, but it's clear, like that picture. They'll move more, but they don't really like it. They're going to stay close to shelter, so they're probably going to stay under canopy of trees, if that's available, and they're going to stay where the food's at. So that's kind of the big thing when the weather's coming in. If you've got a sure thing, like that they're at on the X every day, then it may be worth it. Your grip and grin photo at the end of the day with a wet turkey might not be the prettiest, but you know, um, but yeah, they're gonna stay around the food, and they're gonna stay where we're relatively close. So they don't really stir up too much during the weather, in my experience, I should say.
That's my experience as well. Let's shift
And
gears just a little
well,
bit. Go ahead.
before we get into this, because Hannah's the real star of the show, and I know she's the only reason you invite me along. Um, what is from the Q&A, what is the proper etiquette when encountering other hunters who have set up? Specifically, how much space is considered reasonable?
Good question.
It's this. I'm glad that this question was brought up. So the number one thing on public land is when you set up, make sure you have a tree or a rock or something solid that's wider than your shoulders behind you. Because turkey hunting, there's been a lot of hunters get injured by other hunters doing this. If you walk up on another hunter, or if you hear a call and it sounds real good and you start creeping up towards it and you realize it's another guy out there, make yourself known. You don't necessarily have to, yell, hey, maybe whistle at them or make a noise that's not natural. You don't want to risk being shot because we're all walking around out there in camo, right? So when encountering other hunters, make yourself known would be number one. And how much space is considered reasonable? I would say if I pull up to one of my spots and I see a truck there and it's before dawn, I'm probably not even going to get out. I'll go to another spot. If you're forced, like if you have no other spots, 500 yards, 1,000 yards, somewhere where your calling isn't going to impact their efforts, because we're all on the same team out there. Somewhere it's not going to be like hunting a public land refuge for ducks where everybody's peppering each other over one pond. So yeah, enough reasonable space to where you're comfortable that your calling isn't going to affect their setup and their calling isn't going to affect your setup. I wish I could give you an actual distance, but that's situation dependent.
Well said. So Hannah, tell us about hunting while pregnant.
Yep, I'm going to tag out.
So sorry about our lack of babysitter tonight. So yeah, this was our anniversary hunt last year. We really like to go hunting on our anniversary, and we got a trip up to Oregon, and I happened to be 6, almost 7 months pregnant at the time. So that came with some challenges. My gear didn't fit very well. Had to kind of maneuver that in a way that was a little bit more comfortable for me. I did wear Justin's gear again in a couple of the days that we went out because it was more comfortable for me. And that time we did hunt in a blind. It was very uncomfortable for me to sit on the ground for extended periods of time. It hurt my hips. I was having a little bit of a hard time with that. So we had some chairs, we had some blinds, and that made it a little bit more comfortable for me to do that hunt. That was the main thing, like making myself comfortable so I wasn't moving and hurting and putting myself at any sort of risk in any way. Not that there was any, but yeah, we ended up having a good successful hunt. We doubled that day. That was the day that Justin was really pressuring me. Another time.
This was the second.
Yeah. He was really pressuring me to take a shot, and I felt the bird was a little too far out. I didn't have a good shot at him. I didn't want to. We had been scouting him the day before, and we knew it was these 2 toms that were just they called them the brothers. And I didn't have a good shot, and I really felt I didn't have a good shot, and he kept pressuring me to shoot, and I succumbed to it, and I missed, and the birds flew off. And I was mad. We calmed down a bit, and we decided to give it another try and just see if we could hear anything else. And we had one lone tom come in, but he stayed too far out for a shot. He came from behind us. He came from behind us, and he came in quiet. He was one of those birds that came in quiet. And then the birds that we shot at, the one I missed, came back. And it lined up. I had a good shot. I took my shot, and about 4 seconds later, Justin got his shot on the second tom. And we got real lucky that day that those birds decided to come back.
Yeah. Why do you think they came back? You just shot what do you shoot? A 12 gauge, 20 gauge? You just shot at them. How long did it take for them to come back, and why do you think they did?
Yeah, it was about 2 hours later.
Okay.
And I think it was a pattern that they had. We had been out there watching them the day before, and at that time of day, they were hanging out in that same area. The same time of day, hanging out in that area. So it just seemed to be the pattern that they were used to, and they just fell back into it. And they probably hadn't been shot at a lot before. They weren't real familiar. They just heard a bang, and they didn't know exactly what that was. And so, yeah, they came back. We got lucky with that. We called them back in. They came right back in, and we both got really good shots, and we're very successful that day. That was a pretty good anniversary.
And I learned my lesson.
Yeah, don't pressure me.
Why do you think you missed?
Um, honestly, I was the pressure. I was feeling the pressure, and I knew I didn't have a good shot. I really felt that I didn't, but you know, I didn't have a lot of confidence as in my shooting skills. I'm decent, but I'm not super great, and it's something I'm still honing. And Justin is a pretty good shot, and he's a pretty good instructor as well. And so he'd been helping me with that, and I just felt like maybe I should lean into the confidence that he had in me. And
Mm.
so I was kind of going with that, and I was like, all right, if he thinks I can do it, I guess I'll try. um, but in my gut, I just really knew it wasn't a good shot.
Yeah.
And so I wish I hadn't taken that shot, but I mean, we just got lucky that the birds came back. We got real lucky.
Thanks for being so transparent with us on this. I think it's it's hard to talk about a miss. But on the other hand, I think it's important. One of the takeaways, even as you speak, Hannah, about this, is like as a mentor, whether it's me mentoring a new hunter or my sons, um, something that I've learned is just to have that talk even before we go out hunting, and just that talk of, you know what, if you're not comfortable with a shot, don't take it. And so I want you to be 100% confident, 100% comfortable with it. If I think that you can make it, I'll advise you, but ultimately, um, I don't want to pressure you into taking a shot that you don't feel comfortable with. And I think that's helped me and it's helped the people that I'm hunting with to not
Yeah.
succumb to that pressure, because I think it's hard. It's difficult in that moment to be like, as a hunter, Justin and I have been doing this a long time, and sometimes you realize this opportunity isn't going to last forever. You're going to have to take this shot, and so a lot of times you're like,
Yeah.
shoot, and sometimes it's just not right. And I think it's just having that talk beforehand is sometimes helpful.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and that's something we communicate a little bit more about now. And we definitely had a what we call in our profession an AAR, an after action review, and really going over what works and what doesn't. And
yeah.
Me out.
I did. um,
Tell me
yeah, and
about
it helped
double.
develop my confidence in myself, because when I know I got a good shot and I take that shot, I've made it, and that's worked out for me a few times now. And so just it just takes that repetition and going through it and trying to really get you comfortable with something.
Yeah. How long did it take after you shot your bird, Hannah? How long was it until you killed your bird, Justin?
About 4 seconds, because they were they
Wow.
were
Right next
they
to each
were
other.
about as close as they are in that picture.
Mm-hmm.
She shot her bird and he dropped like a ton of bricks, and then the guy I got like flew off like maybe 20 feet and came back around to beat his buddy up.
Mhm.
Um, and right when he turned back around to come back in to establish dominance, I took him. And it
Mm-hmm.
was probably it was 40, it was like 38 paces, so
Yeah.
about 35, 40 yards.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think that it's probably more common than some people think to have hunters double. And we've done that a few times. And a lot of times, so you mentioned something about uh your turkey you shot was going to come beat up his buddy. Why was he looking to beat up his buddy? Was Hannah's turkey flopping?
No, he wasn't flopping, but it's
Yeah.
everybody's heard the term pecking order.
Yes.
Pecking order comes from birds. There'll be a dominant bird in any group. It could be two birds, it could be 50 birds. There'll be a dominant one, and if that dominant one goes down, all the other ones are going to go beat him up to show that they are the dominant bird.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like you, I've doubled a couple of times with various people, and it's been the same case every time. When that big bird goes down, all the other ones come in to beat him up. And if you're out hunting by yourself, I will say, and you do that, let the other birds beat them up for a minute before you stand up, because you'd be educating those other turkeys that that thunder they just heard was actually a person. So
Hmm.
if you do that and you see that, just enjoy the show for a minute before you stand up.
Excellent. Let's move.
Real quick, there's
Yeah.
some before we get into Earl, there's some good questions in here. So
Okay.
what's a good location to go on public land for a beginner? Anywhere. Just get out there. Don't You're not really going to get a straight answer from any old hunter because they don't want to give away their spots. But you get out there and you just listen and you learn, and just being out there, you're going to learn more than anything you'll read on the internet or hear in a webinar just by being outside. What ammo for a 20 gauge shot size? I'm not going to say any brands, but I will say my wife shoots a 20 gauge and it's a 5.67 shot blend. Just make sure that you get lead free because we are in California. But those blended shots, I shoot blended and she shoots blended. Turkeys near large bodies of water or in steep terrain. Turkeys like flat ground, and they are not waterfowl. So I hope that answers that. Just go where the food's at in those areas. LA, Orange County, where are the birds? Go check out near Warner Springs, but don't tell anybody I told you that.
So yeah, San
Typical
Diego
elevation.
County. San
Yeah,
Diego County has quite a few turkeys.
and there's Merriam's down there too. What's the typical elevation for turkeys in Central California? This I can't answer. Anything from the valley floor all the way up to 5,000 feet. Recommendation for loads or chokes. Like I said, the blended loads are what works best for that I found for me. And then the extra full turkey choke. I won't shoot anything less than a full. Shoot it like a rifle, not like you're shooting ducks too. Aim where you're aiming. I can't speak to how parks thin out their populations. I'd imagine a lot of natural predation. And then is the best shot a shot to the head? The only shot, in my opinion, is a shot to the head. If you shoot at the body, you're going to potentially bloodshot a lot of the meat and potentially not get a fatal shot. A headshot is the most humane and ethical because it just turns their computer off. And it's the easiest thing to see because it'll be bright red, blue, or white. Hunt versus double barrel. I know guys that shoot break action 410s and they're super successful. So whatever gun you're more comfortable with. And that's it for the questions right now.
Excellent. Thanks, Justin. All right. You're up,
Earl.
Hannah. Tell us about Earl.
Earl. Ah, my nemesis. So Earl is a bird that we named him Earl. We were trying to say goodbye to Earl after that Dixie Chick song. Anyways, he was on some private property that we got access to, and we roosted him. And you know, he had a bunch of hens. He was a good big bird, and we saw him in the roost clear as day. We knew everything was good. We went out there and tried to get him the first day. Justin and I went together. That was my second day hunting ever. That first day I got that shed, and the second day we saw Earl. When they flew down, they were starting to come in close to us, and then they took off the other direction into property that we didn't have access to. And so that day was kind of over. We stayed out there for quite a while and tried to call him back, and we moved to different areas of the property to try to get him to come back. And he wasn't coming back. So that didn't work out that first day. And my third day hunting ever, I decided to go out and try to get Earl by myself. We didn't have a babysitter, and so Justin showed me how to set up the decoys and what I was looking for, and I was doing pretty good on the pot call and figuring that out. And I set up. I had a good spot. I got everything all set up and nice, and I called them. They flew down, put on a nice good show, and I was nervous. I was shaking. I was so excited. I had such an adrenaline rush. I was out by myself as a brand new hunter, third day hunting ever in my life. and I was nervous. I mean, I was shaking real good. And he put on a good show. He was strutting. He was trying to get after the hen decoys that I had out. Um, and he had his neck real low for a long time, and then he finally pulled his neck up and started to gobble. And I took a shot and I missed. Um, I was wearing Justin's gear, Justin's face mask, and it had come up like into my eye, and I couldn't really adjust it without the birds seeing me. The distance you're seeing in this photo of where I'm sitting, that's the same exact setup that I had. This was a third day of trying to go out and get Earl. That's funny. One of the guys' names is Earl. In the chat. That's funny. And and I missed him, and he flew off, and like a total newbie, the way he flew off was coming in closer to me, and I stood up and I tried to take a second shot at him, and missed again. So that was, man, I learned a lot that day. I really, I saw him strutting for a long time. I got to watch the fly down. They were responding to the call. I was figuring out, what type of cadence that he was liking, and what they were responding to while they were up in the roost. And that was just such an informative day for me. I learned so much by that failure, by those misses. And definitely don't take that second shot. This ammo is real expensive.
Right.
And then we went out with Keith Swope. And I got my first bird on a different property, and then we came back and we're like, you know what, we're gonna try to get Earl again. And we told Keith the story of Earl. And we told Keith the story of Earl, and we went back, we set up the decoys, we tried to call him down, and he would not fly down. He would not fly down into the area that I had seen him fly down a couple days. Would not do it. We sat for probably over an hour, almost 2 hours, I would say, trying to call him. I mean, the sun was fully up and would not fly down. Then he finally flew down in the complete opposite direction and walked off the opposite way. And so what had happened is he learned. I taught him what those decoys were and what that shot was. So I taught him how to evade me, and he still has. Later that day, after Earl walked off in the opposite direction, we went to a different side of the property. We went to a different side of the property and did some more calling, and we heard some birds way off in the distance, and a whole nother different group of birds came in on the opposite side of the property, flew in over the creek and came up the hill, and I got that bird. He was probably only about 15 feet away. He came in from behind us, and as soon as he came around the tree, had a great shot and was able to get him. So that was just another story of not giving up just because you had a failure in the morning. I mean, we tried to call Earl in for a long time, and he wasn't having it. And yeah, we were successful later in that day, and I got that bird there that you're seeing on the screen, and it was real close. And I mean, they came in pretty quick. We were probably only sitting down for about 45 minutes. They came all the way across that creek, and it was about 10:30 in the morning. So it was that morning shuffle that we were talking about.
Yep.
So the second group of birds came in and did their shuffle and got lucky.
I want to jump. She's being modest. That bird was less than 10 feet away. And if that picture had better resolution, her shot didn't even have time to spread out from the wad. Like, we pulled the wad out of that bird's head. It was that close.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Nothing personal, buddy.
Just a side note, I think one of the takeaways, even as I'm looking at this picture, Hannah, is just to take the time to take good pictures. And this is a really pretty picture. You guys did a good job with setting the scene up, and it's a picture that you should have framed if you don't already.
No, we don't actually.
All right, we're to our last slide, guys. Thank Thanks for hanging in with us. We still have almost all the participants, so thanks so much for keeping it interesting, Hannah and Justin. This is our last slide. Quickly go over this Grand Slam hunt and what you learned from it, Justin.
Okay, so that's one of my best friends. His name's Craig. Him and I went through a lot of pretty extensive training together. He's my battle buddy. He lives in North Carolina. He's a game warden in North Carolina, and he'd been chasing his Grand Slam. And if people don't know what that is one of every subspecies of wild turkey in the U.S. Either lifetime. Some people do it in a year. Some people, take a while to do it. But the Rio was his last bird to get. And he called me and asked if I could put him on a bird, and I told him I could. And he jumped on an airplane and flew from North Carolina to California. And I have never worked so hard for a turkey in my life. He planned to come out for a week, and I was like, "Oh, we'll get 3. Like, you'll go home with 3." Well, that picture was taken on the last afternoon before he got on an airplane, and that's the only bird he got.
Wow.
For some reason, when he showed up, the bird shut up. But a few things that I learned from him. So he hunts Easterns mostly when he's at home. And he told me that the way he calls and the way I call sound completely different. And when I started paying attention to it, it's true. And we figured out that, for lack of a better way to say it, it's a different language. That the way he was calling, he wasn't getting very many responses. And we would use the same, like we would hand the call back and forth. And when I would call it, it's just the cadence or, the preamble to doing the yelp or the cluck or whatever. They would talk to me and they wouldn't talk to him. So if you guys start to travel and hunt, and we noticed it when we went to Oregon too, different populations, like it's just something about the way you learn to call your local birds. Yeah, that was the big takeaway to that. But again, that bird was patience. Just we stuck it out. We hunted 12 hours. Like we hunted the whole day. And then when it was past shoot time, we would stay out there and look for birds and where they were roosting. So just grinding it out. And that ended up being his Grand Slam. So
Love it. Outstanding. Yeah, I've noticed that too. And I think another takeaway is like if a call is working, if you're getting good responses from a call, don't stop doing that. I've had birds come in and then a buddy will start wanting to call and try to work a bird. In my opinion, just like if one call is working, just keep with that call. I've had it to the point where we've had about 8 different calls, and with a buddy, we had different calls in our boxes or our hunting vest and stuff like that. And just this one call that my brother had, a diaphragm call, was the only thing that the turkeys would respond to. So I think it's kind of goofy that way, but I think it's kind of cool that you just never know sometimes what call is actually going to work.
Yeah.
So
if that's the last slide, there's one last question that I think is pretty applicable.
yeah.
So BHA looks like they're putting on a camp. He's asking for late season tips.
Yeah.
Don't rely on decoys. Rely on your calling for late season. And if you get a bird to start talking to you, keep that contact. If he gobbles, like yelp over his gobble. That'll get him fired up. Because once they stop talking, that means they got a hen. And then late season, birds probably have been shot at. They've probably been educated. Patience again, and take as many calls in the woods as your vest lets you, and at least one box call, at least one pot call, and at least one mouth call. And calling is key in the late season.
Yeah.
I would say that's the big thing.
Yeah, just a quick shout out to James, who wrote that question. James is a hunter education instructor, and thanks so much for being willing to put on that clinic. And my thought, James, is it could be late. The turkeys could be gobbling late this year. Justin and I were talking about that prior to the webinar starting, and a lot of times when we're getting these snow events late, or excuse, late in the year, like in March, a lot of times those birds don't start actively getting after it until, you know, late in the season. So you might be actually hitting the jackpot this year, since we've just had these this big snow and a lot of the moisture falling. What's your thought on that, Justin?
I'm watching our local birds right now. I'm thinking like the 10-day looks like it's supposed to be sunny, and the season opens for adults in 11 days. So I'm hoping that everything's right on track. But I have seen it, like we were talking, if the weather is consistently wet, it's going to push things back.
Yeah.
So that one year, 2 or 3 years ago, when we had that atmospheric river come through, I didn't shoot a single bird until the last week of the season. And
Hmm.
yeah, so I think late season this year is going to be good though.
All
I
the
think
birds
you're
I've
right.
ever gotten have been late season.
Yeah.
Huh, interesting. And I think this last question popped up about watching a video the other day about tube calls. I don't exactly know what a tube call is, Justin. Do
Oh,
you?
I do snuff tube call. Yeah.
Okay.
So that is basically it's like a if I'm talking about the right thing, it's a piece of latex stretched over like a snuff can, and you blow through it to make your yelp. I don't carry those, but I do know what that concept is. Um, or it could be a wing bone call. Um, anything that makes, I will say, do they work just as well? Anything that a bird will reply to and come your way, if it works, use it. People have been hunting turkeys since the Stone Age, so we've used literally everything. I will say, don't. I'm guilty of it. Don't fall into the gimmick and the newest and the shiniest. Get you a box call. Get some kind of mouth call, be it a tube call or a diaphragm. Learn how to use them, and that is what is going to be key to, does the call work?
Right on. Well, Justin and Hannah, thanks so much for being on here tonight. And Justin, thanks so much for your work as a hunter education instructor too. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you passing on the tradition to future generations. And you have the most adorable baby.
Do you want him?
I have
Sorry he
enough to
joined us
notice.
tonight, but at least he's being cute.
So, and really well behaved. It's amazing. So, anyway, you guys take care. Thanks for joining us tonight.